Consumer New Zealand has called on the Commerce Commission to consider banning card payment surcharges, citing concerns over excessive and hidden fees. While the Commission is reviewing interchange fees to lower merchants' costs for accepting card payments, Consumer New Zealand says there's no guarantee that this will lead to lower surcharges for consumers. The organisation argues that surcharges should be regulated, at the very least, or removed entirely. New Zealand, at the moment, we've got no regulations on surcharges, only guidelines that are recommending transparency, fairness and the like. Guidelines that Consumer New Zealand says are frequently ignored. And as I said at the start of the show, quite mind-blowing really, that some surcharges exceed 20%. And estimates New Zealanders pay between 65 million and to 90 million a year in excessive fees. Jessica Walker, Consumer New Zealand's acting head of research and advocacy, says they have hundreds of complaints showing merchants are not complying with the guidelines. And she joins me now. Jessica, good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Well, let's talk. We're going to talk surcharges, obviously, Jessica. But when we talk about them, is it credit card? Is it all debit cards? It's the sign at the till that says 2% surcharge, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So basically, when you make a payment with a credit card, or if you're making a contactless payment with a credit or a debit card, then the merchant, so the business, incurs fees for accepting those payments, and they're entitled to claim those costs back. And so, yes, we see this happens a lot, obviously, the surcharge. So it does cost a business more to accept a credit card contactless payment than a debit card contactless payment. But we hear from retailers that they're not able to separate those out. And so what they do is they do a weighted average. And in essence, what that means is if you're paying by debit card, then you're probably paying slightly more than what it's costing the retailer to offer you a debit card contactless transaction, but they don't have the means to separate the two out.
So it's not the merchant's fault, is it the banking? Who's kind of at fault here, or is it the law?
That's what we want to get to the bottom of. So where is this excess money going? So the Commerce Commission has, as you mentioned, they've got guidelines out there. We're really concerned that a lot of people are losing out because the guidelines are not being followed. And so we think that's where this excessive fee of amount of 65 million, 90 million, who knows, it could be higher. We think that's where that's coming from, because there seems to be no consistency. A lot of the time there's no transparency. Sometimes we think they're completely hidden, and we're just saying, you know what, enough is enough. We want to look to what's happening overseas. So the UK, the EU has banned surcharges. The Reserve Bank in Australia is considering an all-out ban of surcharges. So what we're saying to the Commerce Commission is just please consider it. So when you're looking to regulate surcharges, at least put this as an option on the table. So let's look at the pros and cons and see if that would work for us in a New Zealand context. Because right now, I think that the everyday New Zealander is really, they're feeling this in the pocket.
Yeah. You said that there were hidden charges kind of bundled up with surcharges. Yeah. Can you give us an example of how this happens?
Yeah, so a lot of the complaints we get about this kind of thing is, say you're getting, a frequent one is when you're paying to park your car. So you'll jump out, you'll go to one of those meters and you'll see, I don't know, it's $1.50 to park, but it's a $1 flat fee for using your card. So what is that? Is that a surcharge? Is it a processing fee? Is it a platform fee? And there's probably all these things being factored into it, but you as the consumer, you're just feeling this surcharge, which is almost 100% of the cost that you're paying. And so these are the kind of things that we're hearing about quite frequently. Saying when you're booking a flight, there'll be a flat fee, and if you're booking a cheap flight, then that's a really significant percentage. So we're saying that all of these things, that it just feels really unfair. And we think it's time to address it.
And you know what, Jessica, actually, now that you reminded me, I've got all these, I've gone, oh my gosh, yes, it happens to me. Yes. Especially when you're booking a flight or they might say there's a flat fee of $5 or something like that.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you what, this is what you're saying too. There's no transparency. Yeah. Is it administration? Is it, who am I paying for this $5? Where is it going? Because I've still got to pay for my seat and I've still got to pay for my flight. So where the hell is this $5?
That's right. So this is what we're talking about with the hidden fee. So we're talking about the bundling. And we think that's
Uh,
well, it is confusing for consumers. And then there's the fixed fee, so where it's the same amount no matter what you're spending. And we're saying, well, what's happening there too? And we think that lack of transparency is a real big problem. And so we think considering
mm.
banning surcharges all out, so we would know exactly where the money is going because surcharges wouldn't be factored in. We think that that is not only going to be better for shoppers, but surely it's going to be better for businesses too, if they
But would
know
it?
what they definitely can and can't
Oh,
pass on.
sure. So, say it was regulated more heavily, not just a loose guideline. I could
Mm,
obviously see the benefit for the consumer, for you and I, and when we're buying something. But you said that when you go to use your Visa or something in a dairy, and it says 5% or 3% because they
yeah,
they get charged by the bank, right? Is that correct?
yeah, yeah. So they'll
So
be
so
paying the bank.
Right. So if it was removed, oh, all right, well, that wouldn't even
Yeah.
be there. But if there's a regulatory over it, like a stricter one, would you be happy with a minimal fee, and it would be across the board, or would it be obviously for which business gets what?
So we understand that when the Commerce Commission is looking to consider regulation, they will be looking at things like caps. So that would
Caps,
be,
yeah.
so you would know for sure. So right now it's guidelines, but if there was a regulatory cap where they couldn't charge you more than say 1.5%, then in theory that should make it better because there would be consistency. But then we've got
Mm,
concerns, would everybody just raise a surcharge to meet that cap? Because right now there are people who are charging us excessively, but by the same token there are some businesses that are completely absorbing these costs. There are others that are just meeting their costs.
yeah.
And so I think that there would be a potential risk there that all businesses would start passing on the maximum cap, and that's not a
Gosh,
situation we want to be in either.
you know what, Jess? It sounds like the blooming wild, wild west, doesn't it? Like,
It's pretty
every,
complicated.
it's really complicated. Like, businesses all doing their own thing. And I do see that, especially like Lotto, right? You go into a shop and you can't buy Lotto with a credit card. I don't know what if that's to do with surcharges or they just don't
Oh, I
allow
didn't
it.
know that. Oh, that's
Yeah,
really interesting.
pretty much. Yeah, please, if anyone's listening and I've got that wrong, but every shop I've popped into, and I've thought, because normally I get them online, but I've thought, oh, I might just buy a ticket, and they say no credit
Yeah,
cards for Lotto, so I don't know why. Um, but yeah, I mean, they could put a surcharge on it. Is it because it's gambling? Don't know. The
yeah,
UK,
possibly.
it could be. The UK, as you said, in the EU have already banned surcharges. How did they work out for them? Do you know? I mean, was there pushback? Did it go smoothly?
What we hear from people who earlier last year we got somebody who was I guess a prolific traveller, and he travelled all around the world, and he emailed our consumer advocates and said, I've been to lots of countries around the world and I have never experienced surcharging like in New Zealand. It's unbelievable. One, because it's pretty much everywhere you go, but two, because it'll be a different amount everywhere you go. And so
Mm,
we think that people who are coming from the UK and EU and places where they don't have surcharging like we have here, it comes as quite a surprise. And by the same token, when you go over there, you'll realise how much easier it is and straightforward because you know exactly what you're going to be paying. What we
yeah.
do know is that the card payment providers are still totally viable over there because you might hear arguments about if we do away with these fees and it'll mean we've got less money to invest in innovation and fraud protection, but we know that
Uh,
countries that don't have surcharges, they still do better than us in a lot of those respects anyway.